All right, if everyone can hear me, I think we're going to go ahead and get started now. All right, so first of all, welcome. Happy Tuesday, and thank you for taking the opportunity during lunch to come in and join us. This is our first official WLAMom event. My name is Patty Woodruff, and I am a current Wayne Region board member, soon to be on the Women Lawyers Association State Board next year, serving as a director at large. So the Mom Committee was founded during the pandemic by myself and Kirsten Solanowitz, who's on the Zoom as well, because Kirsten and I recognized that we needed to have some sort of a forum where lawyer moms could bond and lift each other up. As some of you already know, being a lawyer mom is exhilarating, it's stressful, and it's wonderful. Perhaps just mentioning it is enough to put you at ease, knowing that you're not alone in this journey. I want to give a special recognition to Rokia Japer, who is not on the Zoom call, but she was the president of WLAM when Kirsten and I went to her to ask for her support to make this a statewide committee. It was originally going to be a Wayne Region committee. I'd also like to recognize Ryan Kelly, who is the current WLAM state board president, for all of her support and her guidance in helping kick this committee off the ground. She's one of our committee members, and I just wanted to say thank you. And thank you for joining us today. All right, so I want you to sit back and relax and listen. We have the pleasure of being joined by an esteemed panel. I want to tell you a little bit about our panel members before we kick off the questions. Our first panel member is Judge Kirsten Frank Kelly. So Judge Kelly serves as a judge on the Michigan Court of Appeals, and she's served there since 2000. Prior to that, she was on the Wayne County Circuit Court bench since 1994 and on the Grosse Pointe Park Municipal Court in 1987. Judge Terry Lynn Dennings is the next panel member. She serves as a judge on the Macomb County Circuit Court, where she was appointed this past December, and welcome to the bench. She's our first Black judge to serve on the Macomb County Circuit Court. And prior to that, she served as an attorney for a Fortune 500 company. Judge Dennings, welcome. And lastly, we have Judge Angela Lasher. She serves as a judge on the 90th District Court for Emmett and Charlevoix County since January of 2020, where she is the first female judge to serve. Prior to that, she served as a prosecuting attorney for Emmett County. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. I want to start kicking off with some questions. I have a couple of planned questions and we'll take it from there. I'm going to open it up to the panel and ask, when you became a judge, did you have any concerns or preconceived notions about how your role as a mother would be impacted?
Are you going to call us on individually, or should you just like randomly shout out?
Judge Kelly, we'll start with you.
That was not fair. When I first became a judge, I was pregnant. All right. So that year I became a partner in my law firm, a judge, and a mother. And Grosse Pointe Municipal Park was a part-time judgeship. There's only 6 of them in the state at that point. So being a mom and a judge at the same time as being a lawyer was very difficult. But it wasn't that bad because I had a very supportive husband. We were fortunate enough to be able to afford full-time care inside the home. So it worked out. The big problem was, as a trial judge, as a trial attorney, you're prepping for trial. That's really time intensive, as you all know. When I went to Wayne County Circuit Court, it was much easier because it's 9 to 5. When I was a trial attorney, you had to fly down to Florida to take expert depositions. As a trial judge, you could wait until the kids went to bed and read the depositions. So being a judge was much easier as a mom than as a trial attorney. That's why I always recommend to women, especially women, to think about a judgeship, because it really is very stable for your home life, except for elections. And it's a very good thing as a mom, as a judge.
I would kind of tend to agree and kind of echo what Judge Kelly said. You know, I was a prosecutor, so I never got the chance to go to Florida for a deposition or anything like that. But I was certainly, you know, on call on the weekends. There were times where there were evenings that I needed to work or to have things done. So there was something to be said for, you know, an 8 to 5 job. Sometimes we do have, you know, we might be waiting for a jury to come back or have a preliminary exam that goes long. But for the most part, I can leave at 5 o'clock and I don't have to worry about working into the evening or we're working on weekends. So that part was nice. I think the other thing that's nice about being a judge and having this position is I think there's a little bit, believe it or not, if you plan really well, there's more flexibility with scheduling because you really can set that yourself. And as long as you can plan ahead and know kind of what's happening and what your docket is, I think there's also a little bit more flexibility with things like even being able to run out in the middle of the day. You know, I have a 7-year-old, so he's in first grade, you know, and so if I want to run out really quickly because he has a field trip and I want to meet him for, you know, maybe an hour, not take the whole day, but I can build that into my schedule and run out and do those things and be present, you know, for a field trip or something during the day. And so I have found that that has been a really great benefit as well.
Good point. Good point. Judge Dennings?
So my perspective might be slightly different, which when you asked me, I was like, I don't know if I'm right for this panel. Because one, I'm a new judge, and two, my son is 19. So, but what I do find, he's home for the summer, is I'm like, what is he doing? Like, he's not like a youngster, so I know he's not in day camp or school. So I guess you never stop being a mom, and it never stops having an impact on you, no matter how old your kids are. So, you know, my concern is until he has a job, I'm like constantly wondering, you know, what this 19-year-old is doing. But I do agree that there's the flexibility of, you know, during lunch or whatever, I don't live too far from the court, so popping in to make sure there's no parties going on and all that kind of stuff. So
that's great. That's
but I echo what everyone else has said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose I should also ask, so Judge Lasher, you have a 7-year-old, Judge Dennings, you have a 19-year-old, Judge Kelly, how old are your children now?
Well, my first 3 elections, I was pregnant.
Oh,
With each kid. I know that's not the optimum time to have children, but now they're 34, 31, and 30.
okay.
So I always mark my time as my oldest daughter is 34, she'll be 35. That's how long I know I'm on the bench.
And when you've had elections.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of elections. Actually, that's the worst thing about being a mom and a judge, are elections. You're away a lot. In Wayne County, when I was first elected for about the first 10 years, judicial politics was like a blood sport. It got really ugly. Not so much now. It's not like that now. It's much more ethical and respectful. But when I was there, it was really ugly. And your kids hear that stuff, and that's very difficult. When my daughter was in kindergarten and I had a contested election, some kids showed up in the school wearing my opponent's like the pins and stuff like that, the campaign stuff, and she was distraught. It's like, why don't you like my mom? And so they instituted a rule that there's no politics in the elementary school. So elections, I think, are very, very difficult as a mom. So,
Judge Kelly, I was actually going to say, I give you so much credit for the fact that you went through 3 elections and that you were pregnant. I can't even imagine. You know, I was appointed in January of 20, but I was actually challenged in my first year because I was just filling out the rest of another term. And so I had to run for election in November of 2020. And so at the time, my son was 5. And I agree with you, elections, because you spend a lot of that summer trying to do your job and trying to parent, but then also, I mean, it was a time of COVID, so we didn't have as many public events, but I still had to be out there and to do things and spend, my weekends that way. And a lot of times, we just brought my son along because he's kind of a go with the flow kind of kid. And so we would just bring my son along, but just having to explain to him too, the election process and kind of the uncertainty of what was going to happen was difficult. And like you, why was this person trying to challenge me and, take my job away from me?
Yeah.
And so trying to explain that to a 5-year-old, and I'm hoping I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. Well, being uncontested is a really blessing. But
I've heard.
yeah. Well, I had primaries and contested elections except the last 2. So for 30 odd years, I've been in contested elections. So
Wow.
it's tough on kids. But I took my kids too. And the other judges that were running too kind of adopted my kids. So they would pass out things for them. And so they felt like they were part of the process. And all 3 of my kids are very political now.
That's
And
great.
I'm also, I'm also running, I have a contested race. So,
Good
having
luck.
a 19-year-old is positive in that respect because, he can grab his friends and they can do signs and, he can recruit his friends to do, stuff that would be a little bit more difficult for me to get adults to do. So,
That's what he'll be doing over the summer.
yeah, until he gets a job and he says I gotta work, but yeah, until we get to that
they
point.
can do all sorts of stuff when they're 19 years old. I mean, I relied on my kids and their friends got into it,
Yeah.
and it only cost me like pizza.
Yeah. Yeah, go to this parade, go to this festival, here's some shirts, I'll pay for you guys to get in. So yeah.
Well, kids can really get into the fact that their moms or their dads
Mhm.
are really judges and they're important. I mean, they don't understand that when you're in the house, because I remember one time my son was talking about identity theft or something, and I said, that's not true. And I started explaining to him, he goes, you have no idea what you're talking about, Mom. And I'm like, do you understand what I do for a living? So they don't respect that, but their friends do, and their friends will always help you. We have a lot of fundraisers here for judges and WLAM, and the kids and their friends always did bartending, they did setup and they clean up, and they loved it. So don't underestimate your 19-year-old and his friends.
Yeah. Well, and the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old would be cute for campaigning and going door to door too, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
He
Something
was.
different.
I mean, I don't like to have to do that because it just, but you do. I mean, you put him on your campaign literature because I know I'm biased, but he's super cute. And, people respond to that and, put him on Facebook and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, it's also helpful for the people, your constituents, to know that you're a mom, and moms know what being a mom entails. So I would imagine that would be very helpful and totally understandable and relatable.
I would think so. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears and talk about self-care. Do you, judges, I'll start with Judge Jennings, do you incorporate self-care into a daily routine with the stresses of your job? If you do, what do you do?
I take naps every day. And I can do that because my son's 19. So, that, and I tell people like, that's the way that I relieve stress is I just have to just not think for a second and just take a nap. So typically when I get home, that is something that I do. I exercise, not as much as I probably should, even though I can tell the difference when I do it. And, I just try to be kind to myself and just remind myself that I'm doing the best I can. Like some of these decisions are very, heavy. I have the family and juvenile docket, and so I'm making decisions about parental rights and things of that nature. And so, just trying to be as kind to myself as I would be to someone else, to a friend that I was talking to.
That's a very, that resonates with me as being a family law attorney. I know we have some family law attorneys on the call too. I've from working in legal aid with domestic violence survivors to clerking for family court judge at the time, Judge Haggerty, and now clerking for Judge Mary Beth Kelly in Wayne County. I can say that that resonates with me because it's so important with the dockets and the cases to be able to listen to yourself, to determine what you need, and to take that and do it for yourself. It's just as important as your job, because your mental health comes first and then everything follows from there. Judge Lasher, what about you?
So first of all, I'm glad to hear that maybe naps are in the future again, because we gave that up when my son was about 5. So it's nice to know that maybe someday I'll get those back. But no, certainly it's a little bit harder when I come home. I'm right in mom duty. I mean, I have a wonderful husband who's does everything and is super supportive, but I really like to channel in with my son as soon as I get home. So I'd say, we take family walks a lot. I mean, we live in northern Michigan. It's finally starting to be nice weather. So just kind of taking that family walk where I shut off work and we just talk about, my husband's day, my son's day. We do that. So in the evening, a lot of times, my husband right now is in a master's program. And so when he's studying after my son goes to bed, that's kind of my time to read or just maybe watch TV or zone out. So I do that. And then the other thing is, and this is kind of something that has been set in stone for several years now, actually since my son was born, I play on a trivia team once a week. And so that's completely mine and something that I do and something that I was told I could continue to do as a judge, because I have both prosecutors and defense attorneys on my team. So there's no, look of impropriety or anything like that. But just having an evening where I go out and I'm with people who kind of knew me before I was a judge, but still know what I do, to kind of just focus on, just having a good time and just having fun. So I really enjoy my Wednesday night trivia.
That's great. What kind of trivia is it? Just general trivia?
It's just general. I mean, and it's just more about just, like I said, just going out, just having a couple of hours where I can just kind of just relax a little bit and just enjoy the people that I'm with. So that's always a good thing for me to look forward to. I kind of just leave everything behind for those couple hours.
Yeah, that makes sense. Judge Kelly, what about you?
Well, mine was a little different. When I came home, I left work. There was a real line between work and home. So like I garden, I build doll houses for nonprofits, and I read a lot, and the kids, we like to watch a lot of cooking shows. I don't know why, but we watched a lot of cooking shows, but we really, when I came home, I came home. So that was my self-care. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but that worked for our family.
Hearing from the three of you about this reminded me of when Kirsten and I started WLAMom. And we're trying to think about a mission statement, what we're going to do. I remember RBG discussing motherhood, and she was interviewed about motherhood, and she was interviewed later about how she was able to attend law school with a 1-year-old at the time, and then how she was able to strike a balance between both. And she said that when she was at school, she was studying and she was working. When her daughter went to bed, she was studying and she was working. But that time in between was time for her children. And she found that motherhood and her career served as respite from the other.
I kind of agree with that. That worked for me. I'm not sure that works for everybody, but that worked for me. It's like when I said, you have to, as an attorney, you have to fly to Florida and take a deposition, or when you were a judge, you could wait till the kids went to bed and read the deposition. So when the kids were awake and I got home, it was kid time or family time.
Right.
So I
And
agree with that.
you could pour yourself into those things, knowing that there would be a time for both. And
Yes.
it helps me too. I think because I love my job and I love my family. But I get joy out of each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Judge Jennings, I know that your son is 19 and entering onto your campaign workforce. My next question is, and we'll start with you, what do you wish you would have known as a lawyer mom when your son was young?
That's a good question. I mean, because I had my son in law school. So my career trajectory started off a little different than maybe other people's, because I had one child and one chance with my one child. And so some people, I think, attorneys, men who don't have children, when they start their careers, they have the opportunity to really focus on their careers. So they're getting clients and they're going to seminars and they're, doing all that stuff. I didn't do that stuff early in my career because, I had one child. And so I'm working long hours as it is, and I didn't want to take any more time away from him than absolutely necessary. And so, when you're not getting clients and you're not doing certain things, that does impact your career trajectory. And so, I mean, I guess I would say to other moms, like, everything will be fine. I mean, my path was a little different than others. And I still ended up at the destination. So it's a journey. It's not a race, it's a journey. So just be patient and do what you need to do for yourself and your family.
Did you ever feel stuck in your career?
Whenever, if you saw how many jobs I had, whenever I felt stuck, I just moved. I just changed jobs. But I always changed to also, grow and get more, experience. And so, whenever I had a job interview, I had to go through why I switched and changed all these jobs. And so, I mean, I guess for me, what I ended up finding out, that private practice, even though I kept trying it because I kept in my mind thinking it was not conducive to it wasn't conducive to the balance that I wanted to have in my family. So had I remained in private practice at a private firm, at some point I anticipated I would be stuck, right? Because I wasn't doing what I knew needed to be done in order for me to move up the career trajectory there. So I didn't really allow myself to get to that point, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. It does. Judge Lasher, what about you? What do you think what would you have wanted to know when you were a young lawyer mom?
Well, I'm not young, but my son is. So I would say, because of my experience is pretty, I think, pretty opposite of Judge Jennings. I'm an older mom. I had established my career. I did not have my son until 15 years out of law school when I was 40. And so I had already spent 15 years just being a lawyer and really having that be my primary focus. So I actually consider myself pretty lucky that, my son came along after I had been in the prosecutor's office for over 10 years. And so even there, I was very established there. And so they were really good with me about flexibility and understanding that my life was changing and that I was going to be a mom and what that meant. And so I've been just exceptionally fortunate that I worked there and then, became a judge and then had those things that we talked about with flexibility and being available and being able to be involved in the school and all of those things. And so, I'm still learning because I still, have a young child. I'm still figuring it out. But so far, I would say that I've just been really fortunate to be in a position where I think hopefully manage to juggle both things at once, and have a really supportive husband. And I would agree with something that Judge Jennings said. I think the important thing is, even when you're, whether you're a lawyer or a judge, and whether your kids are young or old, is just to give yourself a break and understand that it is, obviously, we're doing two of the toughest jobs that anybody can do. I mean, being a mom and, being a lawyer and having that career. And so I think sometimes we forget to give ourselves a break and to focus on ourselves, and to take that time, and to understand that you're going to make a mistake, and that's okay. And so I think it's just so important to remember to be kind to yourself.
Judge Kelly, what do you wish you would have known back then?
Well, it was a long time ago when I was a lawyer, Mom. But I think the worst thing that was prevalent when I was a lawyer and a part-time judge was the sexism in the profession. And that was extremely difficult. I mean, very, very difficult. When I became a lawyer, there was less than 1,000 women lawyers in the entire state of Michigan. And they're mostly concentrated in the lower part of the lower peninsula. So it was very difficult. When I was pregnant and campaigning the very first time, a lot of people would say, like, well, how can you be a judge if you're going to be a new mom? I mean, that doesn't happen now. Sexism is still prevalent. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to be sensitive to that and call attention to it when it happens in front of you. And I think that judges women judges particularly, are in a unique position to fight that on the bench and in the profession. So I would say that was the most difficult thing that I faced. And I think that we've come a long way, but I think we've got some way to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, kind of coming into my next question, my final question before I open it up for people to ask questions. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson poignantly, I thought, raised a concern during her Senate confirmation hearing that there were times that she didn't get the balance of motherhood and lawyering right. How does her reflection resonate with you? We'll start with Judge Jennings.
So I guess just going back to what I said earlier, we're always trying to do, well, not always, but I mean, for the most part, we're trying to do the best that we can, and we're trying to make the best decisions for ourselves and for our families. Sometimes, you're thinking that this client matter is very important. And so, you sacrifice your family or your family time for that client. And you never get that time back with your children, but, at the same time, it's your job, and it's how you, or your career, your profession, and it's how you earn money, and it's how your family, a part of how your family, survives. So there are going to be times where work, may take precedence over something that's happening in the family. And sometimes we can lose focus, on what's really important. And because we are, typically ambitious women, and we want to, progress, and we want to accomplish. And so that's a different dynamic than the role that we typically play at home. And so it's just, I think sometimes we can just lose focus a little bit, because we're trying to accomplish, right, professionally. And that requires us to sacrifice. So I don't know if I answered your question. It was a really hard question.
I mean, I understand it. It's a hard question. It's an emotional question. I remember when I was watching it live. Again, one of the perks about working for a judge is you can schedule your time. And so I was able to watch the Senate confirmation hearing. But her comments took my breath away, because it's more than just what people call like mom guilt. And people say mom guilt this, mom guilt that, and they pass the turn of phrase so casually. but it's hard, and I am hard on myself, and I know other lawyer moms that are hard on themselves too. I don't know what the secret is. Obviously, if I did, I wouldn't be feeling that way, but I don't know. I think we have to allow ourselves to take some grace, and like the three of you have said, just to take a breath. Judge Lasher, what did you think? Were you able to catch any of KBJ's confirmation hearing?
I did. And I would agree with you. I mean, I think that comment struck with me, and I would think that probably for most people, because I think any mom who is a lawyer or a judge has had times where we don't think we get it right. And we second guess maybe some of the choices that we're making, or, for me, and this is a small example, but I used to pick my son up from school every single day. And we had that time in the car ride on the way home. And I think probably all of you know that's crucial time, because you talk about their day, and that's where you hear things that are really going on, even in the first grade, that just happens. Well, since I took the bench, and my husband is in graduate school, he picks my son up now. And so that was a very hard transition for me to make. And I'm not quite sure I have had a balance right, because I feel like I'm missing out on just even that, 10 to 15 minute car ride. And so when I get home from work, I've got to make sure that I sit down and I have that concentrated time with him so that I hear the same things. I don't necessarily want to hear it all the time from my husband. I want to hear it from my son, so that, so I feel connected and in tune with what happened during his day. Because quite honestly, sometimes into the evening, he's forgotten whatever happened, even the biggest things, he doesn't remember. And so I have found that I really missed that time. And that was something that, I really didn't have a choice. There are days that if I'm done with my docket, I can leave early and go and get him. But it's certainly not an everyday thing where I have that time. And so that's something that I still question, whether or not I'm getting that balance right. And if I'm getting, all the information that I want from him from just what happened at school. But I think you're not always going to get it right. And I know we talked a lot about this, about just giving yourself a break. And like you said, giving yourself some grace, that you do the best you can, and you do the best you can.
Yeah.
Those car rides were crucial for me. I'm sorry. When I heard you say car rides, it brought a smile to my face, because
right.
My son went to school out of district. So even in high school, I took him to school, and then my job was so flexible that I was able to pick him up from high school until he got his license. And so I don't know. I just smiled about that, because you can ask a whole bunch of different questions and get information. And you're right. If you wait until later, it's going to be, oh, it was good. What happened? Oh no, everyone. So it's nice to get them fresh right when they're walking out the door. So, or into the door, to kind of tell them to have a good day. So yeah.
Mhm.
Especially on a Monday as many days as during the week, I find that I'll get the start of a story on Monday, and by Friday I've gotten the whole picture. So that's always helpful for me. Judge Kelly, what about you?
Well, I have a lot of friends who are judges and lawyers and non-lawyers and not judges, but I don't know any single mom that thinks they got it right. So nobody thinks they got it right. You're always going to think you're not good enough, because that's the most important job in the world to me. But I do agree the alone time is really important, and that's where you get the stuff. I didn't have the luxury of picking up. I dropped off, but I didn't pick up. But what I did when I got home, when I was cooking dinner, the three kids would be sitting around the island, and we had fruit cocktail as hors d'oeuvres while I was cooking. And so that's where I got all the information, kind of like the car ride, but fruit cocktail was ours.
Yeah.
So I don't know any mom who thinks they got it right. I just don't. I really worked really hard at it. I think every single person on this call works really hard at it, but you're always going to think I didn't get it right.
I think that's kind of the mark of being a good parent, because I think that if your children were to be asked, our children, anyone's children on this call were to be asked if they have good moms, they'd all say they have the best mom. Because I feel like it's when we are reflective and humble that we can, it may not feel as good for us, but what your children see as is usually 100, it's usually the other side of the coin. There'll be times when I don't pick up my son for maybe a day or two, and then he prefers dad to tuck him in at night. And I'm like, oh great, he's flipping. He's not mine anymore. He just wants to be with his dad. I didn't pick him up, and I said I was going to pick him up, but then it just flips back, and now we're on a 3-day stretch of just wanting mom. So kind of looking back at that and taking that with a grain of salt.
Well, Judge Denning, if she's on the family docket, different children need different things from different parents at different times. And you just have to bank on your partner or your spouse or your friends or your support group to give the kids what they need. But again, I would say that, like, give yourself a break. We're all, as long as you show up every day and you're trying really hard, your kids appreciate it.
When do you, I feel like working on a family law docket can be triggering at times as a mom. So I guess I want to ask that kind of question. Have there been times when, and you don't have to answer, of course, if you don't feel comfortable answering. It just spoke to me as sometimes, a lot of times these cases are very sad. We don't get families that are in great shape coming to the court. They're coming asking for help, and they're coming very vulnerable, and fact patterns can be familiar to people. Burnout and secondary PTSD is real. And when you zero that in on being a lawyer mom, it can be very potent. And so I want to know if you feel comfortable sharing, if you've ever felt overwhelmed and burned out by some of the hard cases, whether or not they're family cases, if they're criminal cases or other types of cases where you've really struggled with the fact patterns.
Well, when I was in Wayne County, I was the presiding judge of family division. And the cases that bothered me the most were domestic violence. Those are very hard as a judge to fix, because you can't fix it. You can do the best you can with protection and everything like that. And I remember one family, we got her out of the house. We got the kids out of the house. We had locked up PPOs, everything like that. And when we set the trial date, that's when it became lethal, and he killed her. And so that's very difficult to deal with, because you can do everything you can, but you're not in that home. And the other problem I had was parental alienation. I know there's a lot of debate whether it's the appropriate term, but parents do horrible things to their children when they're in a custody battle, because, most times these people are coming to family court, they pay their taxes, they show up to work, they love their children, they're going through a terrible, difficult financial and emotional time. But after it's over, if you've got good lawyers and you got a good judge, they keep paying their taxes, they love their children, and it works out. And that's what 95% of the cases is, that 5% or 2%, I forget what the percentage is, but those are the really ugly cases. I mean, and those are the ones that stick with you, the domestic violence and parental alienation.
So I would, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judge Lasher.
I was just going to, I would agree with Judge Kelly. Before I took the bench, when I was a prosecutor, I did the abuse and neglect docket. And so that was something that, and actually before law school, I was a social worker in the foster care system. And so, I mean, I feel like I've been doing this for so many years of learning how to kind of turn that off as much as possible. I mean, obviously you can't turn it off completely because it's difficult to try to not get burned out with what you're dealing with, because you just take in so much horrible information and situations and scenarios over and over and over again. And so I really don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I think you try really hard to not get burned out, even with, obviously I'm doing the district court docket, but of course we still see just about everything with that docket. And the hardest ones, as Judge Kelly said, are when kids are involved, whether that's, domestic violence, obviously child abuse, if it's an operating while intoxicated and there are kids in the car, those are all the things that I think are the most difficult to deal with. Anything where a child is witnessing something that they really have no business witnessing. So for me, those are the ones that are hard to let go of.
Judge Tennings, what about you?
I've only been on the bench for since January, so I can't say anything about burnout. It's I didn't do family before I was appointed, so for me, it's learning a new area of law. I mean, I have juvenile as well, so just learning about adoptions and juvenile and family. So I can't speak to the burnout part of it. But I do know, I mean, like Judge Jokic has been doing family since she's got on the bench, and Judge Viviano Antonio, he did family his entire career. So definitely a way to manage. And I guess maybe if it's an area that you really enjoy, like anything, right, that points, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and you just work your way through, but I can't really speak to burnout at this point.
That's a good point, though. Like when you're doing something that you love to do, the sad cases, the 5% of cases will always stick with you, but the 95% and even sometimes, all of the cases give you enough to keep you going and keep you moving forward and not stopping, not dropping the ball. Even if you're just kind of staying there, just incremental change and staying encouraged that you're doing what you want to do, and that in and of itself will give you perseverance and the courage to just keep trying and fighting burnout, I would imagine as well. Well, with that, those are the ends of my questions that I have. So thank you for sticking those out. What I would like to do is open it up to any of our attendees. If you have any questions for the judges that you would feel comfortable asking, please start your video and show us what you have. Go to the chat.
Hi, Annie Hussein here.
Hi, Annie.
Hi, I first want to thank you all for this wonderful opportunity. It's nice to feel the support and all of the experiences that have been shared. It's just so vital, definitely for, I know I'm speaking for other people that are present here as well. My question is that despite the criticism, how do you think being a mom adds value to being on the bench?
It's a great question.
All right, so I'll just say that I have been told that I'm exceptionally patient, and I think that that is because I'm a mom. So I think that has a huge, I think that that's a huge factor. I mean, I think we've learned patience. I think you've learned how to juggle multiple things at one time. I mean, I think we all know that as soon as we get home, we multitask, that we are taking on, 10 different things at one time, and we're handling all of them. And so I think that absolutely applies to how I do my job and how I handle a staff and handle, people in front of me, and having patience and just dealing with so many things coming at me at the same time. I think motherhood is a good first step in all of those things.
I could not agree more. That is absolutely correct, 100%. And that's why statistically women tend to win judgeships electorally more, because women and moms are perceived as more fair, willing to listen, empathetic. I couldn't agree more. You said it beautifully.
Ditto.
Yeah, I mean, if I think we should put mom on resumes.
Yes.
My sister is re-entering the workforce, and she is she's been home. She had her second child during the pandemic. She's re-entering the workforce, and she's like, I don't have a resume. I'm like, let me add it. So like, I'm sitting there, I'm like listing everything that she's had to do for her newborn, while her my older niece was starting kindergarten via Zoom. All of the time management, the patience when you're talking with persnickety attorneys or difficult technological issues, I think that my husband, every time he'll give me grief if he thinks that I'm not being patient with him when he's getting ready for something. I'm like, you have no idea how patient I am. I think that that's a great skill. And I do think that I would imagine that it would be very beneficial during an election to have, that makes a lot of sense actually, because you're getting out there and you're showing people your life in a way that you're not doing by just handing them your resume. All right, well, it looks like we got a question from one of our participants. It says, as an older mom, I often get irritated when I see another lawyer mother appear in court, particularly on Zoom, with a child in her lap. Have our judges experienced this, and how do they feel about it?
So the attorney had a child?
Yeah, so that's me. I wasn't sure if you guys
Oh.
would pick up the background. So I come from an era when I went to school to be a paralegal first, we were instructed, you don't share anything personal about your children. Like I would, if my children were sick, I would not tell an employer I was sick. I would actually call off sick myself because there was such a stigma attached to hiring a young mother and how much work they would miss. And so I think part of that maybe boils over into who I am today. And so I've noticed since Zoom, we sometimes have lawyers appear and they have a child in their lap or there's a child running around in the background. And I'm always telling my clients, make sure your children are nowhere around or to be seen during a court hearing. And so I'm wondering, am I being too hard on other young lawyer moms because the world was hard on me? And I just wonder what the perception is from the bench if you've run into this and what your thoughts are on it.
I've never seen it on a Zoom thing. We've been doing Zoom now for almost 2 years. We tried to go in court once or twice, but I've never seen that happen. But what you're talking about, I'd like to refer back to my earlier answer. That's sexism. And I think if you have a mom on the bench, they're much more sympathetic and accepting of, schedule changes because of a sick child or things like that. And I think it's much better today than it was when I first started practicing law or was first on the bench. But I've never seen a child in the background or in a lap.
Neither have I. I've had, obviously, I've had defendants have children, but I've yet to have a lawyer have a child. And quite honestly, I think I would take it on a case-by-case basis. I try to be I'm not a huge fan of Zoom, I'll just be honest, for court, but it's something that we all deal with. So I try to be pretty understanding. And so I think if we had a female attorney who something happened and was in that circumstance, quite honestly, I don't think it's appropriate for kids to listen to what happens in court for the most part, depending on what their age is. But it's something that I would probably work with if I had to. If it was something that wasn't happening on a regular basis, emergencies happen, things happen. I would be open to working with that attorney depending on what kind of hearing it was and what the circumstances were. But I haven't had it happen yet, so.
Thank you.
We've had it happen. We've had it happen a few times, but again, it's a case by case. One attorney, it was a male attorney. Child was not on his lap because the child was older, and we could hear them yelling at each other. Like, I'm in court. You need to turn down the video game or something like that, and came in and let them know, you need to go to a quiet location. But we've had other cases where a new mother would have to take a step out to nurse, and so we would move her case in the call so that she could go ahead and accomplish that. I think, like Judge Kelly says, it's very important to be accommodating, but also, like Judge Lasher says, to take it on a case-by-case basis, because as our favorite answer is, right, it depends. It depends on the circumstances, but we are very open-minded in our courtroom when it comes to issues, and especially Zoom issues with kids attending school virtually. Sometimes we tend to give a little bit of leeway there. We tend to be pretty accommodating. And the comment from Nicole Getler: I recently had a dad attorney with a 6-month-old on his lap during I don't know what SC is. in district court? Well, that's new.
Show cause, maybe.
Show cause.
Settlement conference.
Yeah, settlement conference. I mean, I guess if you're in mediation, if you're in an hours long mediation, the child's there, that's not really, that might be much more difficult to accomplish the client's needs and the parents and the child's needs than if you're in a brief hearing or a pro-con hearing or something like that. We received another message. How do you get over mom guilt? Which I'm not sure that there's an answer to this, but if one of the judges wants to try.
You never will.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids are in their 30 up to 34, and I still have mom guilt.
I don't think it ever goes away. I
It
agree.
doesn't.
Mm-mm.
How do you-
It just doesn't.
I feel like you're kind of like the sea of mom guilt and we're all just kind of treading water sometimes. Oh, I see that Fawn has a question. Your hand is up. I'm sorry, Fawn, go ahead.
Right, so I was trying to type it. Hi, I'm Fawn Armstrong. I'm a assistant prosecutor here in Washtenaw County. I'm also currently running for district court judge. So my question is, has anyone ever used the fact that you were a mom against you in the campaign, essentially saying maybe you don't have the time to be a judge or something to that effect to try to get maybe the opposition elected over you?
I had that. It was
Okay.
horrible. I was, like I said, at my first 3 elections, I was pregnant, and that was used against me. I had to get off the street. I had to stop knocking on doors. During a debate, my opponent said, you know, you should vote for me because she's going to be a new mom, and she's not going to have time to do this because she'll be really busy. You know, and I finally said, you know, I don't think you should hold it against me that I only have 1 child and he has 3. You know, so it's constant. I don't think it's as bad now. I don't, because I think it's more of a plus for the electorate. I really do. You have a percentage points just for being female, and I think you have more percentage points if you're a mom. I just do. But in the olden days, it was horrible. It was horrible.
I will say, because I just went through an election 2 years ago and my opponent was a man, that was not raised at all. I mean, there were other things raised, but that one was not raised. But I will say, so I'm a district court judge for 2 counties, Emmett and Charlevoix. And in Emmett County, all of our state judges are female. And actually our tribal judge is also female. So in Emmett County, every single judge is a woman, which is, I think, phenomenal. And so I don't think that would gain any traction anymore. Certainly not up here, because it's just such a, I mean, we have an all-female bench. So I think I'm very fortunate that didn't have to deal with that like Judge Kelly did.
Thank you.
So there's a clarification on the question about mom guilt. My understanding of this question is, how do you get over mom guilt when you are choosing your career? When you choose your career over being a mom? I think that I've clarified.
I can ask Patty.
Go ahead, Cindy. Thank you.
So I'm saying, like, in relations to, I have my own practice. I've been practicing for 8 years now, and I've had my firm. And right now I have a baby turning 3 on Friday, and then another one turning 1 at the end of May. And I guess my question is, with all of you are judges at this point, and that's kind of my aspiration in the end. But how do you deal with the fact of not just being mom or being classified as mom, but also being the attorney that you are, the business that you have, and sometimes having to choose your career over your kids?
You know, I'm not sure how to answer that, because sometimes you have to pick your kids over your career.
And Judge Kelly, you know I love you.
I know. And I thought when you started asking that question, I said, I bet that's Sydney. Because I think you'd be a great judge. I mean, an awesome judge.
Oh,
And you know, I supported you when you applied. So, but I don't know how you answer that question, because it's always there. And, you know, actually my husband has the same thing. And that's dad guilt, you know, I mean, that's our family, but, you know, there's times when you're going to have to not go on a field trip because you got court, you know, and there's sometimes you're going to not schedule a Thursday because you want to go on a field trip. I mean, it's impossible to deal with. You're going to have it. You just kind of have to accept it. That's one of the reasons that when I came home, I was home. And when I was at work, I went to work. And then, you know, you schedule what you can. I think Judge Lasher mentioned this earlier. You schedule what you can and do the best you can. As long as you show up every day for court or being a mom, you're going to be fine.
It's not going to be perfect.
It's
My
never.
therapist always says, you're not going to be perfect. You have to be good enough. Like, it's not about being perfect. It's about being good enough and just trying to balance that out.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I was
with
just thinking of how she phrased it, work over your children, and maybe it's just rephrasing it and not thinking of it as you're choosing work over your children. Maybe you're choosing work for your children, because at the end of the day, again, like, that is how your family is supported. That's how your child goes to, you know, gets to school. That's how you have a car. That's how you're gonna pay for college. So you're doing it for your child, not over your child, but not at the sacrifice of, you know, never spending time with your children. I think that's where you have to find the balance, because you can go too far, you know, too far to the extreme, to where you are totally sacrificing quality time and spending time at all with your child. So maybe just like maybe a starting point is reframing it.
I really like that. Thank you.
No, that's a great way of putting it. And I agree with both of you. And I think sometimes, you know, like Judge Kelly said, just showing up, and you might not make every field trip, but you're not going to make none either, you know. And I know that my son, I mean, we have those discussions. And so I show up a lot, and he knows that. And I think there's an appreciation for that. And so, you know, he's okay if there are some that I can't show up for, you know. And so I think I agree with, you know, Judge Dennings. It's not ever about choosing work over your child, because quite honestly, I never would, but it's about balancing them both.
And I would think, you know, reflecting back as a child myself, I knew when my parents showed up, you know, and that was enough to sustain me. I didn't expect them to be at everything all of the time, but I think also, to Judge Dennings' point, reframing it, look at yourself in the eyes of your child. And I think that we would all be fulfilled just from that perspective alone. Mm-hmm. With that, I think we're at 1 minute past 1 o'clock. We're closing up the session today, but before we leave and you're free to enjoy the beautiful weather, I wholeheartedly appreciate all of you. I appreciate the judges for appearing on this panel and taking the time out to talk with us for our first official WLAM Mom event. And I would invite Kirsten, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I want to thank Patty. I want to thank Judge Dennings, Judge Kelly, and Judge Lasher for joining us today. It's been truly a great hour. I'm especially with Zoom things. I'm sure all of us have Zoom fatigue, and half the time I work while I'm listening to these things, but I didn't work very much during this because it was so captivating. So thank you so much for taking the time. It is sincerely appreciated. Like Patty said, our WLAMom motto is respite from the other, because spending time with your kids gives you a break from work. Work gives you a break from the chaos that can be motherhood sometimes. And as a part of our mission, I dropped the link in the chat. Patty, if you could drop it in again at the end here.
Yes.
That would be great. We have hoodies that are for sale in the WLAM store if you're interested. A portion of the proceeds are going to go to mom-oriented charities once we hit a certain dollar amount in sales. But anyways, I encourage you to continue to join us for our next upcoming event. We're going to be doing a book club over the summer, so stay tuned for that. But I'll also make a little plug for the upcoming annual meeting. It's going to be at the zoo on June 3rd. If you have any questions, please go to the WLAM website. And I hope to see everybody there and hopefully at book club over the summer. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you
invitation.
for having
Thank
me.
you.
Appreciate
you.
it. Good luck to
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.
Way to go, lady. That was great.
Did it go good?
Yeah, it really did.